Good morning.
How are you, Ali? Ali is joining us from Pfizer, actually also from Berlin. Um, you are a commercial director for pain medication at Pfizer Germany. I'm really looking forward to your presentation about the role of digital health and new trends and disruption in the pharma industry. For now, how are you spending this time? Are you working from home? How did your life change?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thanks, Anastasia, for this opportunity to be here. I'm really glad to be part of this important congress, and I'm looking forward for the discussions to come. Well, my life obviously changed a lot, similar to every one of us probably. I'm working home for the past almost 6 months now, which is the new normal, apparently. So working at home with the kid and everything, it's a different game, but I think we are making best out of it.
Should I share the slides for you, or will you do this?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you well.
No worries. Was just asking if we should kick it off, and I should share the slides for you, or will you do it yourself?
Well, I can do that as well,
okay.
However you prefer.
Okay, then.
All right.
I'm looking forward to your talk and enjoy. Also, for all the attendees, you can ask questions during the presentation or after the presentation in your Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Enjoy.
Thank you. So, can you first of all see the screen and hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right, all good. So once more, good morning, everyone who dialed in to be part of this important discussion today. And I hope every one of you are doing well amid the situation that we are all going through. So my presentation will be around, let's say, 20 minutes, which should leave us a good time for further discussion. I shall start with a disclaimer that the ideas presented here are my own and they do not represent Pfizer, as well as if I mention some companies or some startups by name, I don't have any conflict of interest to any of them. So the topic I'm excited in the new era of data and intelligence for healthcare. Obviously, this is a quite broad topic. So maybe I shall start with sharing my perspective on this, what the new era is, and then bridge it to data and intelligence from there. So we all operate in different parts of the healthcare sector, but I assume today that we all share a single objective, and that is to improve the outcomes for the patients. So I would like to start with what drives these outcomes. So there are social circumstances like education level, family income level, work conditions, subjective social status, etc. There are individual behaviors like sleep patterns, eating diet patterns, stress level, and similar. There are obviously non-modifiable factors, as they are called, like gender, age, and other genetic dispositions. And there's clinical care, obviously, like access to healthcare, vaccination, and so on and so forth. So interestingly, the social circumstances are proven or assumed to determine like 40% of health outcomes, versus individual behaviors determine 20% of the outcomes, non-modifiable factors 25%, and clinical care as we know it is around 15%. So I always find these ratios still a bit surprising because we always used to think healthcare almost within the clinical care, and obviously this goes much beyond that. So maybe let's make a quick sense check for what's happening with COVID, right? So the pandemic that we are going through, let's start, for example, with social circumstances. It starts with the fact that first, can you afford to stay at home? Can you afford to work from home? Can you afford to shop online? Do you have a broadband connection? Can you get the support you need when you need? Can you read and understand literature? That kind of circumstances determine the social aspect of it. And there are individual behaviors like wearing a mask and adhering to social distancing rules. They are indeed very crucial as well, followed by some non-modifiable factors like the age we are at, the sex, etc. And obviously clinical care is very crucial indeed, and it will most likely be game changer once the vaccines are out, hopefully. However, at least for now, the impact is kind of limited. And I think the take home here is there is no silver bullet for any, let's say, health condition. It's a combination of putting together different aspects of it. And then you might ask, so we are supposed to be talking about intelligence and data, so why do we even care about different determinants, right? So let me bring this into perspective. So this is the amount of data generated over a person's lifetime. Obviously, these are assumptions, but I think they are directionally give a good sense of it. So let's start with clinical care. It is 0.4 terabytes, which is not bad. It's like 200 hours of movies, followed by non-modifiable factors, genetics. It's around 6 terabytes, which is impressive. It's like the amount of video uploaded to YouTube every couple of hours. And then these guys, social circumstances and individual behaviors, it is 1,100 terabytes, which is several magnitudes of scale larger than the other two combined. And it's like 100 years of data generated by the Hubble Space Telescope. It is huge. And then one might wonder, like, if healthcare goes beyond clinical care, and if there are so much data generated around these different domains, why do we still not see a major shift in the market? I think there are a couple of reasons and explanations for it, but we can just speculate for now. One of them is the change is just getting started, right? I mean, this is a different era, hence the name of the talk. The second one is even for clinical care, the amount of data that has been processed is much lower than the total amount of data. Some estimates are like below 5%, like we cannot know for sure, but the availability of data doesn't directly mean the usability of data, obviously. And then the third aspect would be the data generated here is much noisy than what we used to have and what we used to operate at. So this was to set the scene, basically. And I would like to move further into, let's say, the changes happening in the market. And I will talk about 4 major changes. And I would like to start with the first one, which is healthcare budgets. Obviously, this is very crucial for all of us. And this is what we had in 2018. On average, the healthcare budget per capita per year is $10,600. And of this budget, 70% goes to care, excluding medication, 17% goes to medication itself. And look at these guys. Like, in total, only 7% goes to the sum of preventative care, diagnostics, and digital health. Well, we all might have different perspectives how to allocate the budget, but I think we would all agree that this spend is kind of not the ideal one, probably. So let's look at how this is expected to change in the year 2030. So first, the amount of, the amount of budget per capita is, in some estimates, expected to increase by $1,000 in this study. But a more robust research suggests that it could be up to $15,000, which is like 42% increase compared to 2018 levels. And needless to mention, this assumption is pre-COVID. So things have changed since then as well. And the major shift here is taking some percentages of the care excluding medication budget into these three buckets over there. So diagnostics is expected to increase in absolute terms 8.5 times more than its 2018 levels. The same percentage, the same ratio is 4.2 for preventative care and 3.8 for digital health. And I mean, obviously what we are seeing, like the whole digitalization trend after COVID pandemic will likely shift this even further into these three areas that I mentioned. So all right, like the budget will be spent significantly differently. That's the first major change. The next question that I would like to talk about is who will be calling the shots? Well, we might start with where we are right now. So who is calling the shots right now? So once I started in pharma more than a decade ago, I was taught that pharma is a knowledge provider to the physician. And those days, the physicians were like the real almighty figures in the healthcare market. And we were supporting them with our clinical data and supporting them in their continuous medical education. I think things have changed quite a lot since then. The first change is now the patients are empowered significantly. Like they can get the pre-diagnosis from their, apps or from their devices. And I'm not talking about like Dr. Google, very proper apps like Ada or Babylon, etc. They can get a pre-diagnosis. And then comes home testing. They can be tested at the comfort of their homes. There are online support groups, so they can get connected with patients with similar experiences and conditions. And obviously they can consult their physician online, or they can get the second opinion again online. So they are really empowered right now. And what about the almighty physicians? Well, I don't think they are the almighty right now because they don't need to be. They are also supported by the algorithms like decision support systems, and they can reach out to physician groups with single cases, and they can get the brains of hundreds and even thousands of patients online very fast. So in short, the model assuming pharma to be the knowledge provider doesn't hold anymore. What's the alternative, or what's the other model that people believe is pharma to be the drug provider, like, because there is one buyer generally. So once you are in, you sell the drugs and then you take it from there because you have just one customer to convince. I would argue that this is also not the case. It's true that governments are very important as they are the economical buyers, but more and more HTA bodies are becoming the decision makers sometimes themselves as technical buyers. And also there are the patients, obviously, as user buyers. They do not want to be seen or feel like the guinea pigs. They want to have a shared decision making with all of the other bodies as well. So the question is very simple, like who is calling the shots? But I think it's an open question. The only known here is that it's a very complex system. It's a very complex system, and there are joint decision-making bodies. So then let's come to the third major change. Who is offering the solutions? Again, good old days, the answer used to be very simple. It was either pharma or medical device providers, basically. Well, that is, we know, also subject to change. It's not a secret anymore that the big tech players have an appetite for the healthcare market, but let's get more concrete than that. So the healthcare investments of the big tech players, Amazon, Alphabet, Apple, Alibaba, and Tencent, has increased 12-fold from the year 2010 to 2014 to the next 5 years. This is a huge increase, and as you see, it is scattered between prevention and diagnostics and care, so the whole spectrum that we are talking about. And what is even more impressive is these companies have secured more than 3,500 patents in this last 5 years. So they are getting serious. And then we might say, all right, but healthcare is different, right? We all hear this. Healthcare is different. The companies know very well going direct to consumer, but their impact could be limited because we have the gatekeepers, for example, the physicians. They wouldn't accept their solutions. So let's see if that myth is correct or not. So this is a recent research from Stanford Medicine, and it suggests that around 50% of physicians will have like an acceptance of big tech. They will be kind of waiting for them with open arms. I find this number to be quite high. You might say, yeah, like 30% have a negative attitude to begin with, but things might change over time first. And second, I do not have a similar data for pharma, but I doubt it would be significantly better. So big tech could be welcomed by physicians as well. And this is only one portion of the change. The second portion is obviously the smaller players in the market, which are the healthcare and life science startups. So the first half of 2020 was the most funded half ever. Obviously, COVID accelerated this change, but we could easily see the trend out here. We saw an investment of more than 16 billion in this half. And maybe to put things into perspective, let's say within a year, there is an investment of $30 billion. What does that translate into? So I want to compare this number with the total R&D spent in pharma of all the companies that we know in all of the therapeutic areas. That number is 170 billion. Compared to 30 billion, I think it is now comparable. And the idea is quite similar. Like pharma invests in different molecules, hoping that one of them would compensate the loss of the failures during the phases. And VCs invest in founders or ideas or startups, hoping that the survivors will compensate all of the losses. So this is for real as well. And then maybe let's move on to how pharma is reacting to all of it. Are we aware of this change? If so, what pharma is doing? Shortly. So I will first mention the partnerships that the pharma companies have with startups or accelerators. And in the last couple of years, there's a significant increase in pharma's appetite to form new ventures, partnerships. Unfortunately, I cannot go into detail of every one of this deal, but I think that's the message, because we can see almost all of the big players here, and that's not completely exhaustive. So there are also other deals out there. So again, I think the take-home message is pharma is not paying lip service to innovation anymore. We are getting our hands dirty with these partnerships and with this approaches. And what about our traditional business model, right? This is, let's close with what's happening right now. Is pharma turning agile? So the old quote of it takes 9 months for a baby and 10 years for a vaccine doesn't hold anymore, at least for the vaccine. Let's hope that in this, huge interest for a COVID vaccine, let's hope that multiple companies will succeed in finding the molecule, testing it, and producing it in less than 2 years. So this will be a revolution, literally. Obviously, this is a very unique case, and I mean, the circumstances are very unique in terms of regulatory, in terms of the unmet need, etc. But I bet this cannot be treated just like an outlier. I think it will have permanent impacts on how we operate our core business as well. All right, so I have gone through a lot of information, and I have just one more slide on which I want to pause a bit and summarize what we have gone through. So I started with the factors that contribute to health outcomes, and we have seen that it is now evident that the majority of outcomes are determined by non-clinical factors like social circumstances and individual behaviors, and these domains generate a lot of data. And from this, actually, there are new solutions and companies and data sources that empower the patients. And this empowerment even increases the complexity of the system that we operate in. So the decision-making systems or decision-making algorithms are getting more and more complicated. And increasing digitalization and growing amount of data and the size of the market and the potential impact to create makes this a great target for big tech. So we see we hear the footsteps, but I think we will see more and more their impact in our market in the next years. So with all of the changes mentioned, I will just refer back to the initial question: should pharma get excited or worried in this new era of data and intelligence for healthcare? I think the jury is still out. I mean, there's no definitive answer. We should be aware that there are major shifts. All of these are really major shifts happening in the market. And the fact that we will get worried or excited will depend on us. And I think it will depend on the decisions we make, the partnerships we make, and how we approach to this new era. So with that, I want to conclude the presentation. And I think this should leave us like 5 minutes for a good Q&A. So I will be looking forward to your questions, comments, and Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That was really exciting, especially, you know, considering, as you just mentioned, digital health is a massive trend. I'm guessing also amplified by the current health situation. Plenty of questions from me, but also, dear attendees, we have quite some time for Q&A. So if you have questions, please ask them in the Q&A box. My first question, I mean, obviously, tech is a very different industry, which is operating in many different ways. So in what way do you think will it affect, you know, pharma, which is obviously, you know, very regulated? My first question would be then, do you think will it lead to less regulation or more regulation on tech, you know, in connection to health? Or what do you think, like, in this way, how will it change?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. So I should start with, at least in my perspective, I wouldn't expect less regulation, because even though we are sometimes find it too much, the reason that, like, there is a very good reason that we are very well regulated, because patients' health is on the line. So big tech or other players tapping into this market, I don't think it would change that, and I don't think it should change that. But because, like, fail fast doesn't apply here. Fail fast could mean kill fast, and no one wants that. So I think we should be, like, everyone is quite aware of these. But that doesn't mean that everything will stay the same. Just to give an example, like, the level of evidence that we look for, or the physicians look for, could change. Because evidence is not always RCT, randomized control trials. We are now shifting a bit more into real world evidence. Then more and more we could see different kinds of data also considered as evidence. Some of them would have less of scrutiny behind it. So, but still, the frequency could be higher. Like, the data that you have from your smartwatch is not equivalent to the outcomes from an RCT, but still it could be relevant, right? I think these kind of factors will play more and more role as they will empower the patient, and as it will change the communication between the patient and the physicians.
Right. Yes, this makes sense. I guess then in this way, regulating tech actually would bring a lot more to the patients than deregulating pharma. Yeah, but something needs to change, because, you know, it is a growing area and it's going to occupy more and more, like, larger role. But what has to change in the pharma itself for them to actually, you know, keep up with the trend?
Well, I think there are different dimensions of this. Let me take it that way. So there are changes to happen within the pharma internally, and I think there are changes to happen in the external environment of pharma as well. I think internally, we have to first embrace the fact that things are changing. We have to put resources behind it and read the resources as talent, money, structures, appetite. So it's not very easy to do. And second, I think there is the external domain, which is equally important, about the increasing importance of diagnosis, digital health, and prevention. So, for example, pharma moving into this space requires some kind of vertical integration, and, like, you should be trusted, well trusted by the society to do that, to go beyond just fixing things, I think pharma should, improve the society in general as well. I think that's kind of a prerequisite.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, obviously, nobody likes change. I think it's such a, including, I guess, the patients as well. And I mean, I guess this afternoon we'll actually have an interesting talk as well on the digital health and how, especially now in the Corona times, for example, FDA is massively pushing digital solutions. But of course, when we do it at such a rash speed, there's always a chance that something goes wrong. And, I'm guessing they're not only all bright and shiny, but there are some also bad examples in digital tech itself and in the collaboration with pharma. So how do you think can we avoid this, avoid these kinds of bad experiences or minimize them?
Well, I think like the collaborations between like different players and pharma are kind of required for both sides. I think it would be a win-win, but we should make sure that we understand each other. So there are different approaches to partner and to generate viable, trustable solutions. One maybe initial approach was to buy companies, because that's what pharma does, right? They merge, they acquire, etc. But it doesn't apply here, because what makes an innovative team innovative doesn't work within the pharma, because it might be that all of the things that they do could be perceived as a risk, and it doesn't make sense to insource.
No, absolutely. Oh, I think you froze a little bit.
Have them in.
Right. Well, I guess that is also
company.
Oh, there you are.
Partnering. All right.
I think we're having little connection problems.
I thought there was a problem.
Yeah. All right.
Problem with the line.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you. I can, yes.
All right. So sorry for that. Sorry for that. Maybe I give the short answer to that. So I think the collaborations between startups and pharma could be an answer to generate, viable and trustable solutions. But I think there are different ways to do it, and we should make sure that we go for the right choice between whether to buy them or to partner with them or to build it ourselves. So these are all different options.
Great. Thank you so much, Ali. I hope you get to stay with us a bit longer. And as I mentioned, tomorrow, this afternoon and tomorrow, we have also quite a section on digital health, which, hopefully it will be also interesting for you. So yes, if the attendees have any further questions, then I will. Oh, actually, we do. From Julia. Julia says, I completely agree with you on the point of high need for pharma to increase agility. Where do you see opportunity for increasing agility for pharma? Will it concern CT's duration or approval process, or overall change in the process? For example, conditional approval based on limited clinical trial data, and then further evidence generation post-approval, or any other opportunities?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. So I think there are different aspects of it. The pace that we see in vaccines, I don't think that will be applicable to other domains directly because of the, size of the unmet. But there will be learnings. Like doing things in parallel rather than one after the another is something that we didn't consider that much before, and we saw that it can be possible. So I think that will be learning of agility. And the second one is to, I think, work with the regulators in advance and to hear what they need. And that also increases the flexibility and agility of Pharma and of the solution that we will provide. And I agree, like post-marketing data, I don't think the product data should be stable until the LOE. We should make sure that the data in real world should be added on top of the clinical data that we have. And obviously, plus all of this, there is this agile working, which is a different domain. Some companies are already trying that in their processes.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. And also, those of you using our event platform, you can message each other and continue the conversations and even schedule video meetings if you want to have a direct chat. So feel free to use this functionality. We built it for you to also keep the networking aspects of our events in the digital world. Ali, thank you so much. That was great, and I hope you get to stay with us, as I said, for a bit longer. And yeah, otherwise, wishing you a lovely rest of the week, last summer week.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for everyone making the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.